All right. So our first question I want to ask, the first question I want to ask is, what other goods did the enslaved people produce? We know for sure that they produced what? What we have been looking at for the last 3 or 4 weeks. What type of production?
Sugar.
Sugar. We know that they have produced sugar. What other, so you're correct. What other goods they have been or enslaved people would have produced?
Tobacco.
So tobacco, yes, in the United States. I should ask the question, what other goods in the Caribbean?
Cotton.
Cotton.
Coffee.
So cotton, coffee, yes. What else?
Sir, did they do banana?
No, no, no banana. Cocoa.
Sir,
And they
cassava.
also, repeat?
Sir, cassava.
No, no, no cassava. Not for, they produce cassava, but just for the in their what that area on the plantation they would have produced the cassava.
Provision grounds.
The provision ground. Very good. And in fact, let I tell you a small thing that I would have learned recently. So I went to one of the UE lectures online, the history lectures, and a presenter is, in fact, he's an archaeologist, and he looked at Drake's estate. So that was the estate that was owned by Charles Drake, who established Jamaica College, or left the money to establish Jamaica College. And on the estate, Charles Drake did majority of the things that he did was sugar, but also they produce citrus and pineapple. So they produce things like oranges, lemon, lime, and also pineapple. And so all the citrus with the pineapple were actually used for the planters. So the planters had their own little field, and we know that it's enslaved people going to work those fields. But it is the plant, it is the all those crops, the oranges, the lime, the lemon, the pineapple, were to feed those in the estate. So not only the enslaved people had their provision ground that feed them, but based on that, based on the archaeologists' research, he would have proved that they also the planters had their little garden. And it wasn't a little garden because it was a lot of food that they produced for the great house. Now, so for today's topic, what we're going to look at the forestry industry, meaning not only did they produce sugar, cotton, coffee, cocoa, these are the main ones that we're going to look at, but also they also did lumber. All right. In fact, when we talk about the forestry industry, we're talking about lumber. They would have produced wood. There are two types of lumber production during slavery: logwood, so the logwood and mahogany. Anybody has ever heard these terms before?
Yes, sir.
Which one So the two types of wood is logwood and mahogany. Oh yes, and mahogany, not so much the logwood, but the mahogany. Look at this, nice, nice piece of wood to make um and furniture and those different things. In fact, growing up, my grandfather was a carpenter, and almost everything in the house, every single thing in the house was built by him, and he would have used the mahogany wood. You know that the furniture in my grandparents' house, they are still there today, very strong, very, very strong. And the mahogany furniture is very heavy. It's not like what we buy at ports today or Singer. Which other store you have? Ashley and Kimani Mart and all of those places. No, those things are cheap things, very cheap. Mahogany furniture is very uh, expensive, lovely, and they serve you for a very, very long time. So my grandparents have their mahogany furniture and my grandparents, both of them, they are now deceased. But the furnitures are still there, very, very strong furniture. Um, and so these were two of the different two of the different lumbers that were actually produced during slavery. Now, the territories that produce logwood and mahogany are the chief ones. These are the ones who were the main producers. The main producers would have been Belize, which is here, and Belize was then called British Honduras. So Belize was called British Honduras during slavery. So British Honduras, which is Belize, and Guyana, which is British Guyana, which is right here. So these two territories were the main producers of logwood and mahogany. In addition to that, we have Jamaica that also did a few mahogany production and logwood. The same for the Cayman Islands, more so Grand Cayman also produced mahogany, not logwood, but mahogany. So Grand Cayman produced a lot of mahogany according to Michael Creighton, historian Michael Creighton. And other Caribbean countries would have also produced it. But for CXC, what they want us to focus on is to look at the enslaved people in Belize and Guyana, how they would have produced logwood and mahogany during slavery. Now, for logwood and mahogany to be produced, and we're talking about trees that are very big, rainforest, yes. So it must be a rainforest or subtropical forest. Well, it's subtropical where you have a lot of rain. So it is raining and it is swampy. Now, what are some of the things that you'll find if the place is raining and it is swampy? What are some of the cons or reptiles that you would find in an environment like that?
Crocodiles.
So you find crocodiles, yes. What else?
Maybe snakes.
Maybe snakes. Yes, snakes would be one. Not any type of snakes. Some very big snakes. What else? Repeat. Frogs. Yes. So you'll find some maybe some dangerous frogs. Yes, frogs that can poison, not like the ones in Jamaica that is not poisonous. What else?
Lizards
There are
and
lizards.
iguanas.
Iguanas, yes, you'd find a lot of iguanas there. But think about the rainforest. What are some, I think we would have looked at some of the, in Guyana, when we looked at the indigenous people. What other things, reptiles, animals that you'd encounter into the rainforest? Because you're going into the forest, the mere fact that you're looking for lumber, for wood, you need to go into the forest to search for the logwood, and you need to go in there to search for the mahogany. And so you're going into the forest, the rainforest. So you are correct, but there's one thing that I'm looking for. It starts with J.
Is there a jaguar?
Yes. Yes, you are correct. So in the rainforest in these territories, you're going to find a lot of jaguars in there. Oh my goodness. So you can imagine the conditions to go and to find the, I'm coming, I'm trying to show you one in the rainforest. Oh goodness, this is crazy. And they're all over Central America. All over Central America, the jaguars. Which is, let us show you here. So this article was published in 2013 by The Guardian, and it said Ghana pledges to protect the jaguars. The South American nation talks about to establish a jaguar corridor, a network of pathways that would link core population. So in the forest of Guyana and also in the forests of Belize, especially in Belize, the jaguars are very, very popular there. And what is so scary, because if I had known that jaguar was in Belize, I wouldn't have gone to Belize when I went there. Because where I stayed in Belize, it was very, very close to the forest. In fact, we were actually in the forest where the Mayans settled that area. The food was good, very good food. The food tastes very nice. The Mayan food, how them fix up the food and all of these different stuff. But had I known that they had a lot of these reptiles there, dangerous reptiles, I wouldn't have gone. In fact, I saw a video on social media years ago, about maybe 2 years ago, not so long ago, where the jaguars actually swam in the sea. So people are on the beach, and I think somebody was also in a boat, and the jaguar went into the water, and they went into the sea, people are on the beach and just come upon the people just like that. That's dangerous. I don't know about anybody. So one, the snakes, a lot of different reptiles, they were dangerous. And so most of the enslaved people, well, all the enslaved persons who went into the forest, they were permitted to carry guns. Was this different from on the sugar estate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because on the sugar estate, you were not permitted to carry any form of weapon. But because you are going to deal with things like snakes and the jaguars in the rainforest, then they had to carry guns. The enslaved had to carry guns. And it is females were not permitted to go into the forest. It was the males, the white males and the enslaved males were permitted to go into the forest. Now let us look at the logwood. We're going to look at logwood first because before they went into mahogany, just like how you had tobacco first and then they went to sugar, the same thing happened in these territories where they had logwood and then they went into mahogany production. So there are two main purposes why they would have used logwood. So logwood was used for fuel, meaning that you cut the wood to cook. You send the wood abroad, so it provides some form of cold for people to cook on. Yes. And the main purpose of the logwood was to actually make dye. So the primary purpose was to make dye. So what they did was that the bark of the logwood, what they're going to do is that they're going to boil it and it is going to make a dye, which is the color was indigo. Some other colors were black, gray, purple, and dark red. So that was the type of dye that was used. And during this time, Britain wanted a lot of dye because they had the textile industry where they were making clothes and different cloth, and they were selling all of these different stuff all over the world during the Industrial Revolution. And so there was a demand for dye. All right. So the two main purpose or the two main reasons that they had logwood was to use it to make fuel and also to make dye to supply the European market, especially the British market, with their textile industry. Are we following, ladies?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, what the enslaved people would do, just like how for sugar, enslaved people had their division of labor in the same way, during the logwood industry, they had division of labor. Now, remember, as I said before, only white males and African males went into the forest. And so they are going into the forest. They are going to spend several days in this forest. And so the logwoods were usually in clustered. So you could easily find them in clustered. While the mahogany, you had to go and search for the trees because they were all over the forest. The logwood, they're usually in one area, right? At the end of the day, in the logwood, when they went into the forest for logwood, the men would cook, smoke, drink, right? Both the white males and the African males, they cook, they drink, and they had a lot of recreation activities. They play games and all of these different stuff. However, by the 1770, you're going to have a changeover from logwood to mahogany, where it's not that they're going to stop produce logwood. What they are going to do is that they are going to focus mostly on mahogany production. So in the 1770s, there was a changeover from logwood to mahogany, just like how you had a changeover from tobacco to sugar. And the reasons for the changeover, please note the reasons for the changeover. One, there was a glut, and it's not glut of mahogany. There was a glut of logwood on the European market. So there was a glut. What do we mean by a glut?
A lot.
A lot of logwood was actually on the European market. And when you go to downtown or you go to the supermarket and you have a lot of a glut in terms of tomato, what will happen? If you have a lot of tomato or a lot of mangoes and a lot of apples, what will happen? What will be the
Sir, they
effect of
rot.
that? They would rot, yes, but what do you think?
Sir, the prices for them will decline.
The price would decline, so the price would be very cheap. And so there was a lot of logwood on the market and the prices declined. So in fact, those persons who were involved in the trade of logwood, they were not profiting. And another thing going to affect them is that in Britain during this time, they are going to create synthetic dyes, meaning they are going to create dyes from chemicals. And so the dyes from chemical, the synthetic dye was cheaper, because remember, you are using science now to produce the dye. The logwood, you had to get a lot of logwood. You have to use enslaved people to search for the logwood. Then you are going to boil the logwood to get the dye from it. But with the synthetic dye, you have a larger quantity. It was easier to produce because you don't have to use enslaved people. You don't have to send anybody into the bush. And it was cheaper. So British people started to create synthetic dye, which is dye from chemicals, right? And so you're going to have a changeover from logwood production because of all of these. Those persons who were involved in the logwood trade said, listen, we need to find another wood to make money, and they turned to mahogany. Now, what was the effects of the changeover? One, mahogany is going to be the logwood. If you look at the difference between the logwood and the mahogany, what you see right here? The logwood, what's the difference?
Difference in color, sir?
So, in fact, both of them have the same color. If you cut this, you'll see the same color. But look at the...
Sir, one is in a forest and one is not?
Yes, yes. But, well, so at the time, logwood was in the forest. This was the only best picture I could find of a logwood. And the mahogany was also in the forest. But there's something about the trees. Look at the trees.
Sir, the logwood is easier to cut.
Easier to cut, very good. And the mahogany is
So
much harder to cut. So what is going to happen is that you're going to need more labor because the logwood is very easier to carry. Look at it, you can just cut this easily and carry it. One strong person can carry all of this, but to take this mahogany tree, it's not so easy for one person to lift up this tree right here when you cut it down. So you're correct. And so if you're going to, because of the heavy nature of mahogany production, you're going to need more enslaved workers. And so what they're going to do is that the population of Belize and Ghana is going to increase. So the first effect is a demographic effect, right? For the changeover. The next thing is that the factories, because it is right there in Belize and Ghana that they are going to boil the wood for the dye. So those factories are going to close because they are not all the factories, but some of them are, most of them are going to close. And then people now are going to move from all of this area is the coast. So they are going to move a little bit inland. They are still settling on the coast, but they are going to move some of their settlement a little inland. So instead of living just on the coast, they are going a little inland where they are able to get closer to the forest. All right. Another thing is that a lot of different ports are going to be developed where they're going to ship the mahogany. So these are some of the effects of the changeover from logwood to mahogany. Now, mahogany was very important and very expensive even today. Even today, mahogany furniture is very expensive. Not anybody can buy the mahogany furniture. In fact, most of the wood that courts use today for their furniture is what they call cedar wood. As water touch them, they are destroyed, right? You can't let, if we should have a flood and our house flood out, we're sorry for some of those furniture. But if it's for the mahogany, if your house flood out and you come back, the mahogany will remain. It might soil on the outside, but it will remain strong and firm still. So they are going to use the mahogany for ships, in the building of ships. They are going to use the mahogany for furniture, and they are going to use the mahogany for the construction of houses in Britain. Yes, in Britain and also in the Caribbean where they have the great houses. They are going to use the mahogany to construct houses. So they are going to have build the doors from mahogany, the roof, sorry, this should be roof, the flooring, the beams, all of these different parts of the house. The windows, you're going to use the mahogany, expensive wood. And it's not every house in England can have the mahogany, can use mahogany. It is the very wealthy in the UK and across Europe that would have used mahogany. Not any and anybody. Mahogany was a sign of prestige, right? It was a sign of wealth. And even here in Jamaica, I saw what that house name, Vale Royal, where the Prime Minister lived. Well, that's the official residence back then of the Prime Minister, Vale Royal. And in Vale Royal, I saw some pictures of Vale Royal. And when you look inside, you can see the wealth, the mahogany wealth. The staircase were made from mahogany board, the furniture in there, mahogany. Beautiful, beautiful. So these were the different purposes why they used mahogany. Just like slave labor during on the sugar estate, there was also the division of labor. So you had the captain at the top, which was a white man. You have the huntsmen, the axemen, the second gang, the third gang, and the domestics. All right. So let us look at the captain. So going into the forest, you can't go into the forest with 500 men. You can't do that. You can't go in there with 500 men, but you had to split them up in groups. So they work in groups. They work in groups of 50. So it was 50 men that at a time that would go into the forest. And when they went into the forest, the head of the group was the captain, who was a white man. So the white man, one white man actually went in with the group, and they brought with them their machete, their axe, their carts, the animals that they are going to use, the liquor, water, the food, all of these different stuff. And enslaved boys were also permitted to go into the forest once you reach the age of 8 to 10. So once you're strong and healthy, they will send you into the forest, because the forest is very dangerous, as I would have stated before. Now, at the top of the ladder was the huntsman or huntsmen, right? And these persons were the enslaved who were highly skilled, very, very skilled. You didn't, you could not, they were rarely resold, and they were at the apex of the enslaved pyramid, right? They were at the top, and they were actually treated better than others because their job was very, very important. So while we have the huntsmen for the mahogany production, the very skilled enslaved in the sugar production was called the what? The skilled enslaved in the sugar production.
Sir,
What
artisans.
the artisans are what with another one was the
Jopping slaves.
jobbing and artisan, same thing, yes. But what else? When you are doing in producing the sugar, which one of the artisan tests the sugar to ensure that it's
Sir, the boilers.
the boilers? So they would be the at the top here. So the huntsmen, and some of the duties of the huntsmen was that they were the ones who were responsible to go into the forest to search for the mahogany trees, because the mahogany trees were all over the forest. And it's not every mahogany tree you can cut down. The mahogany tree must be suitable, it must be mature, it must be of age. And so the huntsmen were the ones who went in search for the trees, and then they are going to mark the trees. Now, after they mark the trees, you're going to have the axemen, and they were responsible for cutting down the tree, right? The mahogany tree. And if you look at this, this is a picture from Belize, where the axemen, if you look at the axemen right here, they are here cutting down the tree, and they usually stand on a platform. You see how these trees are big? Oh yes, very, very dangerous. So they stand on a platform, a spring platform. Some books, not all the platforms were made from spring. Some of the platforms were actually made from wood. So they're going to stand on a platform. Can you notice that they're not on the ground? And what they're going to do is that they are going to cut the trees from the platform. All right? Very, very important job for the axemen. Then after the axemen, you had the second gang. And what they're going to do, once the trees are down, if you can look at it right here, they are going to trim the trees, because obviously the trees have a lot of leaves and this on it. So you're going to trim the trees, and the second gang is also going to clear the path. If you look right here, you're going to see 2 oxen right here in the picture. So what they're going to do is that they're going to load the trees onto these oxen to pull it And where they are going to take it to, they are going to take it to the river. And from the river, they are going to allow the, let us go down here. So what they're going to do is that they're going to put it on the cart with the oxen, which is right here, the trees. They are going to take it to the river, because remember that you are in a forest, and everywhere a forest is, you're going to have rivers. And they are going to put the mahoganies into the river, and they are going to, we call it now, float down to the mouth of the river. So you are going to have enslaved people at the mouth of the river that is going to take the mahogany from there. I want to show you a picture of the mahoganies. 1 second. Floating down the river. I'll show you another time. So what they're going to do is that the mahogany is now going to float. The trees are going to float down to the river, the mouth of the river. And then once it reaches the mouth of the river, the enslaved people are going to ensure that they get the mahogany from there. And then they are going to fix up the mahogany, record the numbers of the trees that they had, and then they are going to ship those lumber off to Europe. So that was the process. Now, the next gang is the third gang, and these persons were in charge of to take care of the cattle. So these cattle here, the oxen that were used to pull the mahogany, they take care of them. The next group is the domestic. So the last group was the domestic. And they did the very same thing as the domestic on the plantation, the sugar plantation. So they were usually supervised by white women. They lived in the villages. They didn't go into the forest. They cleaned the house, they washed the iron, and they were mostly women and children. What is the difference between the sugar estate and the lumber hierarchy? What's the difference? One difference that you have noticed. Hello. Go ahead.
I noticed that with the hierarchy and a sugar plantation, it is subjected to like different races. But like for this hierarchy, you just see huntsman, axeman, second gang, third gang, domestic slaves. There isn't, well, it's going to be enslaved Africans working, but the whites also worked as well.
The whites also work. So I show you earlier table here where you had the captain at the top, the white. So the whites were at the top here, but the blacks were still at the bottom, right? But there was a lot more, the relationship was a little different here. There was more social relationship between the whites and the blacks in the lumber industry. But there was something different. With the look at this, the domestics. The domestics are placed at the
Bottom of the society.
bottom of the society. However, on the sugar estate where the domestic was placed,
At the top.
they were placed a little higher than the who was at the base of the and at the on the sugar, the bottom,
Field slaves.
the field slaves. So the domestics weren't ranked at the bottom for the mahogany, right? So these are some of the different things that take place. Now, just to recap, the process in mahogany production, the huntsmen identified the mahogany tree. The axemen, they are going to cut down the tree. The second gang trim the tree. The third gang place the trees on cart and take it to the river. They take care of the cattle. Should be cattle here. Then usually you're going to do these things during the rainy season, and the trees are going to, once it's during the rainy season, the trees are going to float down to the mouth of the river. The bookkeeper is going to take the record, and then you ship off the mahogany off to Europe. All right, ladies, that covers the mahogany industry. So we looked at logwood, we look at mahogany, we look at the reasons why they changed over from logwood to mahogany. So for tomorrow's class, we're not going to meet online. So you're going to use the time to take notes. Read the chapter on lumber from your textbook. And also, you're going to ensure that you study about the forest industry, know the reasons for the changeover. When we return on the 13th, we are going to look at coffee, then we are going to look at cotton, then we are going to look at cocoa, and then we are going to look at the contributions of the Africans to the Caribbean. And then we're through with this theme, Caribbean economy and slavery. All right, ladies. So far, you're at the end of this theme. So you should be able on the exam to do either a question from Caribbean, the indigenous people and European, or Caribbean economy and slavery. Please note, ladies, use the time to read. All right, ladies, please enjoy the rest of the morning, the rest of the morning.
Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir, and same to you. Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.